Hello, my fellow Alaskans. How are you all doing out there today? We are here at the Loussac Library right now at the Americans for Prosperity's Foundation of Alaska's event to help us understand ranked choice voting and how it works. The event is supposed to begin at 6 o'clock today, so I am started this stream a little bit early so that you guys can all be able to take a moment right now to like this video and share this video so as many Alaskans as we possibly can get involved with this will be able to understand, and hopefully by the end of today understand how ranked choice voting works. I myself know that I have a question that I am burning to ask, and maybe they may cover it during their presentation today and I won't have to worry about asking it, but if they don't, then boy, I sure do know a lot of people out there that follow us that know that this is one question that we would all love to understand. And so the only way we're going to be able to be educated enough about how ranked choice voting works is getting out there and actually learning how the process works. The room is filling up quite nicely. Like I said, this is supposed to start at 6 o'clock today. We are all going to have the opportunity to present our own questions to them for how ranked choice voting works if it doesn't get answered during their presentation that they have here today. And again, please take a moment right now, just take a small moment and like and share this video. It is going to be people like you, my fellow Alaskans, that are taking a moment to allow other Alaskans to participate that wasn't able to be here today or just may not even have known this was happening. That's why I'm here. And to make sure that I can make more of these, it takes supporters like you going to my website, Politadick.com, and clicking that support button. Everything goes right back into making sure that I can make it to different events like the one that I was at earlier today, where they were turning into the Municipality of Anchorage's clerk's office, the AO 2022-60 referendum, so that they can start collecting signatures to remove their impeachment power that the Anchorage Assembly gave themselves to remove the mayor for whatever reason they may seem to want. And so that was very good to be able to be there. And it was your guys' support that made that happen. And again, we're here today with the Americans for Prosperity, and they are going to be presenting to us all how ranked choice voting works. We get our first opportunity here on August 16th, or if you're doing early mail-in voting, or you're one of those that goes to the precinct early to go cast your ballot, which is open right now to do, you'd be able to understand how our voting for our congressional open seat that we have for US Congress and how to be able to fill out the ballot, because that is ranked choice voting. Unlike the primary election right now, the jungle primary election that we have, that is just pick one at the moment. But for the congressional seat, that will be specifically for the three candidates, Sarah and Nick, and I believe Mary is the other person's first name. Any of those that are currently running in the congressional seat for the short special election term of 4 months that they're going to serve before the new congressperson gets elected. The primaries will be our first chance to whittle down that pool of 40-some people that are running for that congressional seat down to 4. And then in November, we'll get to do the ranked choice voting for the primary election. So don't get those confused. There will be two different sections on the ballot for the congressional seat right now. The one that has only 3 people on it, that one is ranked choice. The one that has the list of like 40 on it, that is pick one only, just like the special election that we had here just a couple months ago. Again, I started this broadcast just a little bit early. We are here with the Americans for Prosperity. They are going to be presenting how ranked choice voting works. I'm going to take a moment right now and move on forward over to the board and zoom in on it real quick while the room is filling up, so that you can see what's on it without having to struggle of doing it later on. As you can see, there's nothing on there written down right now, but the colors are going to represent how they rank people 1 through 4. And I'm sure they'll be flipping those around on the screen there for everybody to be able to see. And again, we're here at the Loussac Library. If you happen to be in the general area, take a moment right now and come on down to this. There is lots of seats open. If they need to, they will open up the extra seats over onto the other side there and allow everybody a chance to be able to participate in this, especially if you got a burning question that you would love to ask about ranked choice voting. This will be your opportunity to do that. But again, take a moment right now and like and share this video. Like I said, this is going to be supporters like you, it's Alaskans like you that share videos like this, that help keep more Alaskans educated on what's going on within our elections and within our local governments, federal government, so on and so forth. If you do not get yourself a little bit of an education about how to vote or who you are voting for, you're just not doing your civic duty enough out there to where people they vote for namesake only. And that's why our country and our state is in the disastrous condition that it is currently in. Voting for people for name recognition only, or they are a one-horse candidate. And I say one horse, they are a one-issue candidate, and that's the only reason why they want to be elected. Lisa Murkowski is a good example of a one-horse candidate. She definitely doesn't work for Alaskans anymore. She works for her own political agenda, and that's very obvious and very clear. And we got someone else like at a more local level, we got Kelly Merrick, who works strictly for the unions. If you are a part of the unions, vote for her. I guarantee you already are. You're being told to, because she is in Juneau to do one thing and one thing only, and that is to line your guys' pockets with as much of the state money as she possibly can. And that is not who elected her in Eagle River. And I know the constituents in Eagle River, I'm sure they're going to be doing their utmost to make sure that she does not return back to Juneau this year. Keep it up. You guys are doing a great job getting the advertising out there. Don't believe the spin that you're hearing from mainstream media. They will not give it to you uncut and unfiltered like I will, and that's why I'm here tonight, to give you the nitty-gritty without the media spin that you won't hear anywhere else. So we do appreciate you guys all liking and sharing this video, and they should be starting here real soon. I mean, as we're supposed to start right at 6 o'clock, and it is 6 o'clock right now, so this should begin at any moment now. And as soon as they take the stage, I will definitely be quiet on my end and personally start sharing this to as many pages as I possibly can out there while they're up presenting up in front. And so it's up, like, again, it's like I just said, you know, it is all up to you to make sure as many Alaskans possibly can watch this, learn how ranked choice voting works. It's a very confusing, even to me, who is very well educated in it. And I took the time a long time ago. I did a mock when they were first trying to pass this initiative. I did a mock election using Governor Dunleavy, Tolan, Begich, and all those other people that were running in that particular election. And I based it off of 100 people voting in that election. And Governor Dunleavy lost by 2%. And we would have had Begich in office running for our government right now instead of Governor Dunleavy. And that would have been who made it into using ranked choice voting and divvying up the votes that were for the other candidates out there. That was based on 100. So my burning question that I have out there is, let's pretend we're still using that same 100 people, but 30 of those people, when they ranked, didn't rank the top 2 vote getters. Now, their votes completely dropped off. That means only 70 of the 100 votes cast even get accounted for when it comes to the top 2 vote getters.
We're going to go ahead and get started. It's just a few minutes after 6 o'clock. And first of all, I just wanted to thank you for being here. We are Americans for Prosperity Foundation. We are an educational opportunity in our state that Wilson will be out in just a second, but she's going to go over ranked choice voting and the educational aspect of that. So when you go to the polls August 16th, or if you choose to do absentee ballot or early voting, that you are well educated on the rules that have been kind of put into this ranked choice voting. So just to let you know, we have some water out there. We're going to have some great homemade, locally made cookies from a gal here, so make sure you get some when we leave. I wanted to also thank our volunteers that have been working very diligently to make this look really beautiful. And also, again, thank you so much for coming. And without further ado, thank you so much for being here, Americans for Prosperity Foundation and Bernadette Wilson.
Well, how did we get here? That's the big question, right? So I want to echo Stephanie's sentiments and tell you thank you so much for joining Americans for Prosperity Foundation this evening. Big question a lot of people have is that very question, right? How on earth did we get to this point? There are people, myself included, that have voted for decades and now find themselves with a ballot in front of them asking, how do I do this? The other day in the office, a gentleman stopped in his late 70s, and he said, oh, sweetheart, he had his cane, he came and he said, oh, sweetheart, I was told that maybe you could help. I have no idea what I'm doing with my ballot, just how to vote it. So this passed by a very slim margin by a vote of the people. It was sold on the idea that it would get rid of big money, dark money in politics. That was how it passed, though it was very slim. So it was by a vote of the people. Alaska residents are who voted this in. The state legislature, the governor, no one can do anything about that. When the people vote something in, you have a minimum of a 2-year wait period. So for better or for worse, here's where we're at. Okay? So a couple things that I'll mention before we get going. First and foremost, I will tell you that we are up here as Americans for Prosperity Foundation. This is a nonpartisan event. We are not up here to advocate for or push for any particular candidate. Tonight, as we go through this, we'll be talking all in colors. That is in an effort to stay completely neutral. We'll have points through the evening where you can ask questions. I ask you, please, as you ask your question, ask me a question using colors. You can ask me a question using a letter of the alphabet. It doesn't matter. But I'm asking you, please do not ask a question using a specific candidate's name for any race. I recognize that we've got multiple races going on right now, but I'm going to ask you guys to help me out on that, and let's just talk colors. I honestly tonight could care less who you're voting for. This is simply to help you understand the process. The second thing that I want to say before we get going tonight is I want to make one thing very clear. Our efforts to explain ranked choice voting should in no way be misconstrued or misinterpreted to be our endorsement or support of ranked choice voting. Those are two entirely different things. I am not up here tonight to debate on the merits of ranked choice voting or who likes ranked choice voting or who doesn't like ranked choice voting. I'm not up here tonight to talk about, can we change this? Do we change this? How do we change this? Should we change this? I'm up here strictly tonight to say, today, with an election that is only a week and a half away, and then another general election coming up in November, for purposes of this election right now, we need to understand what that process looks like. I have seen lots of theories. Lots of people have thrown out their ideas on strategy. Well, I'm going to do this because I think this will work. Whatever that strategy is, I'm hoping tonight that I can help walk you through what that looks like when Division of Elections goes to count your ballot. And if I can help you understand that end result, if you as the voter decide that that strategy makes sense, go for it. You may use a different strategy depending on the race. Again, I want you to understand what the outcome of your decision is with your ballot. We are not up here to encourage you to go one way or the other or to attempt to manipulate or encourage you to vote one way or the other. So with that, we'll get started. I do want to give a shout out to everyone in Fairbanks. I know that Fairbanks and several other areas across the state are doing watch parties tonight as we take questions. We will also be taking questions from those areas of the state as they will be texting in their questions. So with that, we are going to go ahead and get started. I'm actually going to flip this around. And if you have not bought stock in sticky notes, you should. You should see my office. It is covered in sticky notes. All right, so let's walk through this. ranked choice voting. We've heard lots of questions, so what we're going to do is we're going to start with what does this ballot look like, and then we'll get into those questions of what happens if I only want to vote for one candidate and I want to leave the rest of my ballot blank. What if I want to vote for the same person all the way down? What if I don't want to rank, what if I only want to rank 2 of them? Will my 4th place vote ever count? Those are some of the questions that we have fielded. So we'll vote this ballot, and then we'll go through some of what are the most common questions, and then from there we'll take your questions and see if I'm being articulate and clear with the direction we're going. So when you get your ballot, let's talk about August 16th. That is an in-person election. If you would like to vote by mail, you have until August 6th, so you only have a couple days to get that request into Division of Elections if you would like to vote by mail. Otherwise, it will be in person. In August, on the 16th, when you go in person, you're going to have the regular primary, and then you will have the special general election for the congressional seat. In November, you will have the regular general election. But on August 16th, you'll have the regular primary, and then you'll have the special general. In the regular primary, you will only vote for one. And on your ballot for the regular primary, it will instruct you that this is your primary ballot, only vote for one. You're going to flip your ballot over, and that will be the special general, where then you will have ranked choice voting. And then in November, of course, you will again have the regular general ballot, which will also be ranked choice voting. The special general is for the temporary replacement for the late Congressman Young. The regular general in November will be for the governor, Senate, the permanent, the 2-year replacement for Congressman Young, the full-term replacement for Congressman Young, and then of course you have 59 out of 60 state legislative races that are up. All right, are we following so far? You're like, yes, it's a muddled mess. Feel free to take notes if you want, and you can always find me when we're done. So, primary, easy enough, right? Only vote for one. You've done that one a lot. Let's talk about what ranked choice voting looks like. On the special general election, you'll only have 3 that appear on that ballot. Ranked choice voting, you can have up to 4. And so in the spirit of educating not on a particular race, but on ranked choice voting as a whole, we'll be working with 4 tonight. So when you get your ballot, we're going to ignore these right here. When you get your ballot, in this case, I have 4 candidates in the race. Green is running, pink is running, blue and yellow. Those are my 4 candidates that are in this particular race. When you get your ballot, you're going to have an option for your first choice, your second choice, your third, and your fourth. Under each one, all 4 candidates' names will appear so that you can decide how you want to, quote, rank them. In this case, I'm going to take pink as my first choice. Pink is my absolute favorite candidate, and if anyone disagrees, I'll just troll you on social media, right? That's a joke, if anyone's been following. All right, as my second choice, I'm going to take green. So green, not my favorite, but green will do. So I'm going to make green my second choice. We're going to see if we can get this to fill in. As I say, you guys need, gotta buy stock and sticky notes, I guess. For my third choice, I'm going to vote blue. So I'm going to go down to line 3, and I'm going to select blue candidate as my third choice. On my fourth choice, I'm going to vote for yellow. So on this particular ballot, I have opted to vote and select all 4 of the candidates in order of what my favor is. We will get to, well, what if I only want to select 1? What if I only want to select 2? Or what if I only want to vote 1 and just leave the rest blank? So we'll get there. But for purposes of right now, I'm going to go ahead and select all 4 of them. Here's what Division of Elections is going to do with your ballot. They're going to take your first choice, and then they're going to take your second choice. Ooh, if I can get this off. And then they're going to take your third choice. And then they're going to take your fourth choice. And they're all going to get lined up. And this now becomes your ballot. I'm going to move my ballot over here. These are all my friends that have already voted. There's 13 of them. There should be. Are we right? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 that have voted. Then we're going to go through, and for purposes of clearing this board, I'm going to get rid of all of these other sticky notes. These ones ended up still on there. Those were just trash. But these are all my other options, okay? So I'm going to get rid of these. Now, you know, when you see us doing like our Facebook Live videos, you now know why you see sticky notes like covering the floor and the doors and everything else. They love me. All right, we're going to set those aside. So now Division of Elections has taken your ballot, and they've taken your first choice, your second choice, your third, and your fourth. Think about it as though they've like stacked it, right, in order of your favorite ones. We're going to go and we're going to put everyone, these are all of my friends that voted for blue. So we're going to take blue, and we're going to put blue right over here. Blue right now has the most votes. So we're going to count all these up. This seems tedious, but I will tell you guys, I think it's probably the easiest way to understand ranked choice voting. And then Division of Elections is going to take green, and we're going to line them up. In this case, 4 people have voted for green, 5 for blue, and then it looks like 3 have voted for yellow. So we're going to line up the yellow votes together. And then our pink. And then here is my ballot, where I voted for pink. So Division of Elections is going to take all 4 candidates, however many votes they got, and they're going to say, all right, candidate blue got this many, candidate green, candidate yellow, and then candidate pink. And the first question they're going to look at is who got the least amount of votes. In this case, pink got the least amount of votes. So they're going to take your ballot, and they're going to take, pink is now eliminated. It is as though pink never even ran in the race to begin with, because pink got the least amount of votes. And Division of Elections is going to take that first choice and say, well, pink is eliminated as a candidate, so we're going to take that vote, we're going to stick it aside, and we're going to see who your second choice is. Green is my second choice, or this voter's second choice. So we're going to put green up there. We had 14 people vote. We're looking for 50% plus 1 of the vote. No one right now has 8 votes. And so that's the first question, is they're going to look at it and say, does anybody have that 50% plus 1? They don't have it. So again, I'm still eliminating pink. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So my pink, my first choice didn't make it because pink was the first one to get eliminated. So they're going to go to my second vote of green. And now Division of Elections is going to say, okay, do we have 50% plus 1 now? So we're going to go back and we're going to count it up. You can see right here, no one has 50% plus 1 of the 14 ballots that are on the table, okay? So what Division of Elections is going to do now is say, okay, well, still no one has 50% plus 1 of the vote. So now we need to go to our next round of counting. So the process is going to repeat itself. Which candidate has the least amount of votes that are on the table right now? In this case, yellow now has the least amount of votes. Candidate pink, out of the race. Doesn't matter, it's a non-factor here. So now we're going to take the yellow candidate, and they're going to get set aside. And just like the pink candidate, it's as though they didn't ever run in this race to begin with. They're out. It's a done deal. So that yellow had voted for green as their second choice. This voter voted for blue as their second choice. So we're going to set the yellow one aside. And they voted for blue. And then this ballot, this candidate, again, yellow is going to go aside because that candidate no longer exists, so to speak, in the eyes of Division of Elections. and this one voted for green. And now this Division of Elections is gonna go back again and say, okay, do we have 50% plus 1? And in this case, green now wins with 50% plus 1. We've taken those other candidates and then as though they did not run. Okay, are you following me so far? Are we good? Are we clear? Anybody have questions up to this point? Stephanie will come after you with the microphone. I want to make sure that I haven't lost anyone up to this point.
Thank you. What happens if the second and third choices are tied? How do they do the, in between 1 and 2, do the straw, either flip a coin or do lots?
So, I will double check on that for you. I'll be honest with you, I don't know for sure. I'm under the impression that if they have those least amount, until we get to the final 2, that they would both be eliminated. But I will double check for you on that.
My understanding reading the code is that they have to my understanding is that the code says that they have to draw lots, which is either flipping a coin or having straws between 1 and 2. So how do they get to the next step? Getting the people there to go and look at, because I assume it has to be representing the candidates with the election division ahead. That's what the statute says.
Yeah, well, for regular voting, that's true. We've had races in Alaska that have actually been determined by a coin flip, right? And so that's true. Under ranked choice voting, though, I don't know the accuracy of that because you're going through different rounds. So I'll be honest with you, I don't know. I will double check though. That's the regular election.
What about tied? What if the 2 and 3 are tied?
You won't tie. I'll explain that in a minute. Someone will indeed get to 50% plus 1. So let's flip this around. We're gonna go back to the beginning. So let's say, we're back at the beginning, and we're gonna run through this again, but this time I'm gonna vote my ballot differently, okay? So these are all of my friends that have voted, and I need my marker on the other side. So in this case, I've heard one of probably the most common strategies, I will say, that we've heard is, well, what if I just vote for the same person all the way down my ballot? I don't want to vote for anybody else. I'm not going to do this ranked choice voting thing. I just want the same person all the way down the ballot. All right? So let's take that theory. Let's say that yellow, just for purposes of this conversation, let's say that yellow is my most favorite candidate. So I'm going to stick it out with yellow, and I'm going to say, well, I want yellow as my first choice. I want yellow as my second choice. I want yellow as my third. And then I want yellow as my fourth choice. So no matter what, I am only going to vote for the same person all the way down. Here's the first thing. People that are voting this way know that when you put your ballot into the machine, it's spitting it back out. And it's alerting the voter that it thinks that there is an error. Now, for those that have voted so far early, what that machine is doing is they're going back to the person that's overseeing all the poll workers, and they're saying, listen, that's indeed how I wanted to vote my ballot. And they're putting it back into the machine, and the machine is recognizing that for the second time it's reading the same barcode, and it's accepting the ballot. But initially, it will push it out. If you vote your ballot that way, it's going to try to alert you that it thinks something is wrong with your ballot or that you may have been mistaken. So, whether you're mistaken or not, let's talk about what Division of Elections does with that ballot. So again, we're going to take your first choice, here's your second, here's your third choice, and I went yellow all the way down, baby. And I'm going to put this ballot over here. I'm going to pull these off again. And when we go back to this, I'm going to get these all mixed up, so it's going to be kind of messy. So I'm going to take my blue again and I'm going to line them up over here. I'm going to line these up. And we're going to make sure that we did this. It is, this is like not easy to keep your numbers all straight, right?
Then a white.
You're right. That's how I feel right now. Okay. We're gonna line up my yellows. All right, so there's my ballot, and then here's my pink. So same methodology as before. They're gonna look at, okay, well, who got the least amount of votes, right? It's the first question we're gonna ask ourselves. Whether there's 3 candidates in the race or 4 candidates in the race, it's the same thing. Who got the least amount of votes? And whoever got the least amount is gonna be the first person to be eliminated. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna eliminate candidate number pink. And again, it's as though this candidate never even ran. So we're gonna set them aside. It's important to remember that the way Division of Elections treats the lowest candidate that got the fewest amount of votes, it is as though they never ran. You want to remember that because that's going to help us understand the question of am I splitting the vote, okay? So let's take that, let's set it aside. My second vote was green, so I'm going to go ahead and put green up here. Now the candidate that has the least amount of votes is yellow. So in this case, we're going to pull yellow off, and we're going to go with their second choice is green. And right here, we're going to go to yellow's second choice, which is blue. And we're going to go to this one. So their second choice is green. But this candidate, or this ballot, did something different. They voted for the same person all the way down. So Division of Elections is going to go, all right, well, yellow, that candidate's not in the race. We're going to put your ballot aside. Your second choice is yellow. There's still nowhere for that candidate to go. Division of Elections is going to take it, and it's going to go away because that candidate does not exist, so to speak. And I use the term does not exist lightly, not seriously, but only to help you understand that if you vote for that same person all the way down, that same color all the way down, there's nowhere for the ballot to go when you get to the second choice. And so that choice, that ballot, is going away, right? So whether you vote for one or whether you vote for the same person all the way down, if your candidate gets eliminated, it has the same end result in the eyes of Division of Elections. So that's how the one candidate issue is handled if you go all the way down your ballot. Does that make sense so far? Okay, we've got a few questions.
So, if the candidate is eliminated, is your participation in the ballot process eliminated as well? Otherwise, am I eliminated as part of the whole and not part of the 50%?
Yes, right. So let's talk about that, okay? That 50% plus 1. When Division of Elections says, well, we're looking at 50% plus 1 of the vote. That is 50% plus 1 of the votes that are in play in that particular round of counting. It is not 50% plus 1 of everybody that voted initially, okay? So let's say hypothetically that 100 people vote in that first initial round. But let's say that, 20 of them, so in that first round, we're looking for 50 votes plus 1, right? So we're looking for 51. But let's say that 20 of them decided, I'm not going to play in the second round. I'm not going to vote. I don't want to do that. And so 20 people do not vote in that second round. That means that in the second round of counting, only 80 ballots are now in play. So we're no longer looking for 51 votes. We're now looking for 41 votes. So it is 50% plus 1 of how many are in play at any given moment, at that moment, okay? That was one of the big controversies over ranked choice voting was, well, if you're after 50% plus 1, you're not after 50% plus 1 of everyone that participated. You are considered, as a voter, you are considered as having participated if you participated in that round. So I've told people, one way that kind of helps people think through this in their heads, and you gotta be careful with this because it's one election. I wanna be very clear on that because someone is bound to take what I say out of context. It is one election. But if you can view each round of voting almost as a different election, just as for purposes of a frame of mind only, that will help you kind of comprehend that 50% plus one that the state is looking at. I hope that makes sense. Like I say, it is one election, but for purposes of those different rounds, right? So why that becomes important is, let's say, yellow voted for the same candidate all the way down, right? So that ballot ended up getting eliminated. But let's say, like right away, let's take pink, for example. Pink was down here, right? So pink, if pink did not select a second choice, then that ballot would go away and instantly your 50% plus one would be reduced. And so by reducing 50% plus one, right, that base number that we're looking for, there is a chance that one of these candidates could win without even needing any more votes. They simply have won because the threshold, the 50% plus one of that base number, that threshold has now been lowered because those ballots are no longer in play. So that is if people have said, well, what if I only want to vote for one? What if I just don't want to vote the rest of my ballot, okay? Let's say that hypothetically you voted for only one and it was green. Then it doesn't matter. You voted for one, so what? Green stayed in the entire counting process. Therefore, the fact that you only voted for one doesn't have any difference. We never got to your second choice. We didn't need to get to your second choice. We didn't need to get to your third choice because your candidate stayed in the race for the duration. But if you voted only for one and it was pink, not only is your ballot going away, but now we don't need 8 votes because we just took a ballot out. And remember, we started with 14, so that's why we were after 8. You don't need it because we've now eliminated pink, we've now eliminated yellow, and in the middle of it, this ballot got eliminated and that ballot got eliminated. Which means now you only need 50% plus 1 of 12. So now you're only after 7 votes. I hope that, are we following that? It gets really confusing. I totally understand. So the idea of, let's talk about, well, am I splitting the vote? That's a concern that I hear from a lot of people. But we're splitting the vote. We're going to be so divided. So when we talk about, are we splitting the vote? Let's have that conversation, right? However you feel like your ballot could potentially be getting split. The reason that you're not splitting a vote in ranked choice voting is you have to remember that this is not the same process as before. Your second vote does not even count or get looked at unless your candidate is already out of the race. They're not even in the running anymore. It is though they were never in this race to begin with because they're not in there. So you cannot split the vote. Let's say that you voted for pink, and then we're going to say that you voted for green. So I love pink, and I am like ultra passionate about pink, and I cannot stand green, but you know what? Green is going to be a lot better than blue, so fine. I will go ahead and I'll rank it. I really don't want to split my vote, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rank it. You might love pink to pieces. The reason that you're not splitting the vote is because when pink gets eliminated, it goes away. When Division of Election says it's as though that candidate did never run in this race to begin with, you're left with green that now is going to go over there. Division of Elections is not taking your ballot. Let's say you go 1, 2, 3, and well, we need this one 4. So let's say that this is my ballot. It's it's very important that people understand that Division of Elections is not taking your ballot and going, oh, okay, there's one for yellow, there's one for pink, there's one for green, and there's one for blue. It doesn't work like that. They're looking at your first choice only, and as long as your first choice stays in that round of counting, that's the only one we're looking at. And so the idea of, well, am I splitting the vote? You're not. Because at the point that you go to your second vote, your candidate is already out. Like I say, the best way to think about that is it's as though your candidate never even ran to begin with. One question. Yes, Stephanie, we've got one right here at the front. Right here, the black vest.
Thank you. Using this example, what if you vote yellow, pink, and then green, as far as the counting of the vote?
You vote yellow, pink, and then green?
Yep.
So if we go back to where we were at before, right, you remember pink had the least amount, so they got eliminated, and then and then yellow was the next one to get eliminated, right? So yellow, if we're eliminating yellow, there's nowhere for pink to go.
Right.
So pink is gonna go out. Now we're gonna be back to green.
So on that round of voting, then it will be counted on that. Okay.
Green's gonna go, your other one didn't have a choice. If you skip and I'll let Suzanne correct me if she thinks I'm wrong here, but Division of Elections has said that if you skip a place, then they will move up, right? So then your choices would move up. So if I voted 1 and then I voted 3, but I skipped 2, the assumption is that you messed up, and 3 would then bump up to 2, if that makes sense. I was going somewhere with the splitting your vote, and I lost my train of thought.
To be honest, there's something on the website about the flipping of the coin that would happen.
Oh, okay.
Just for clarification.
Okay. And so we've heard people that have said, okay, well, does it split the vote? I've had people ask me, strategically, if I want my candidate to win, how many should I vote for? That's a big question, right? How many? Like, what's the strategy that wins? The first thing I will say to you is I have heard as many theories on what strategy wins as I have heard opinions in the world. The reality is that is going to be different for each election, and that's going to be different for each voter. So, each voter has what we call a purity test, right? And when we refer to a voter's purity test, what we're talking about is for that voter, where is their hard line in the sand? Some voters will say, I'm not going to vote for you unless you line up with me 100% of the time on every issue. And if you don't line up with me on every issue, I don't really care. In fact, I may not even vote, I'll just stay home, but I'm not going to vote for you. There are others that will say, hey, as long as you're good, like even half the time, it's fine by me. You've got the important positions over here, or this over there, or whatever. I like your best friend. You're good on half the issues. I'm going to vote for you. There are other voters that do it by issue. And they won't even apply a percentage. They'll just say, listen, this is the issue that matters to me the most. And if you don't line up with me on this issue, whatever that may be, maybe it's a budget issue, a social issue, whatever it is, they will say, well, if you don't line up with me on this issue, I don't care about anything else, but I'm not going to vote for you. That purity test looks different for each voter. And it will look different even for the same voter, but different for each race. So the question that you have to ask yourself is you decide, should I rank? Do I rank? How many do I rank? Do I go all the way down when I rank? The question you should ask yourself is, if your top choice had not gotten into this race to begin with, if they are not in it at all, would you still go vote? And if you went to go vote, who would you vote for? And if you would say, yes, I would go vote, and this is who it would be, then you might consider ranking. I know some will say, hey, this candidate wasn't in the race. I'm not going to vote for anybody else. I'm going to stay home because I could care less. There's a lot of people that do that, especially in Alaska, right? We talk about low voter turnouts, a lot of people are just fed up with the system. So you have to decide at which point are you just gonna say, hey, I'm fed up, and it'll look different, right? You may take one race and say, listen, I'm only gonna vote, if this candidate wasn't in the race, I wouldn't go vote. I would not vote for anybody else. That's it, I could care less who wins from there, then fine, don't rank anybody else. But if you would say to yourself, well, if this candidate were not in the race, I'd still go vote. I'd still go vote for this person. It wouldn't be my favorite. I might kind of have to hold my nose while I did it, but I would go do it. Then I'd encourage you to rank it. Because if you can ask yourself, as you go through each level, you need to ask yourself, if my first choice were not in this race at all, had they not even campaigned or declared their candidacy, would I vote? Would I still vote out of the three that are still in the running, out of the three candidates? And then after you vote for your second one, you want to ask yourself the same question. If my second choice were not in this race, and it was only these two that were left, would I still go vote? And like I said, that question is how you answer that question would be my best advice on how to vote your ballot. And I can't answer, no one can answer that question for you. The answer to that question is going to look very different, depending on what your purity test is, depending on which race it is. There is no set thing, but what's important to understand is that if whichever candidate gets that least amount of votes, they in turn will be eliminated, and that 50% plus one threshold is 50% plus one of the votes that are still in play, that are still on the table. So whoever decided to engage and participate in that round, we're looking for 50% plus one of the participation in that round of voting. So think about this as a situation that could happen. Blue gets a lot of votes, but not enough votes to win. But blue needs 50% plus one to win. Green doesn't have 50% plus one either. But they're less than blue. But if pink and yellow voters decided that they weren't going to rank anybody else, they were only going to vote for one. All the pink voters said, I'm only voting for one. And all the yellow voters said, I'm only voting for one. And we eliminate both of them because nobody else voted for any more. Without even getting any more votes, without any more votes even being counted, blue would have won in this example. Because it's 50% plus one of those that participate. All right, let's open this up for questions. Those are some of the questions that we've been asked the most. It's definitely not all of them. While Stephanie gets over there, I will address one question that we have been asked, and it was actually very intuitive. Someone asked me, well, Bernadette, will my fourth place vote ever count? No. Your fourth place vote, if you have 4 candidates in the race, they are never going to get to the fourth choice on your ballot, even if you voted it all the way down. Because we ultimately are still we're trying to whittle it down to 2 candidates still. So because we're whittling it down to 2, that fourth place one we would never have gotten to. In an instance, let's say that hypothetically you have only 3 candidates that are in ranked choice voting. And this will be true in several scenarios regarding state legislative races, for example, in Alaska. We have some races that just don't have 4 candidates in them at all. They just don't. So even in those races, the same guidelines would apply. If you have only 3 candidates that are in that race, your third choice will not count because we won't get there. Your first or your second choice is going to remain somewhere in that counting. So if you can take however many candidates are in ranked choice voting and -1, that's how many votes could potentially count. And I say potentially because it will be determined by how many rounds of counting actually happen, right? Does someone win in the first round or is it one in the second round? Okay, I think Stephanie got her way back there.
Hi. how are they ever going to conduct a hand recount?
They can't.
Ever? So how would a candidate ever challenge the outcome?
You're gonna have to ask that of Division of Elections. I don't know. I can explain ranked choice voting, hand recounts on this front don't make sense to me. It's a lot of mess to undo.
I have a question. If there's 4 people on ranked choice, the first one you rank, the second one you don't want any type of vote, is it okay to go ahead and put a line all the way through her deal?
Will that,
Or
so,
it's, I should say, I'm trying not to identify anybody, I'm sorry.
She's asking if you just physically draw a line through the ballot for that said candidate.
so if you mark up your ballot at all other than filling in that circle, right, you risk that ballot being considered spoiled.
Oh, so they might call it spoiled, the whole thing?
They could call that ballot spoiled.
If you draw the line through the whole.
Yes, and we've had people ask, some people have said that they're not comfortable leaving their circles blank, right? They don't want anybody else to fill it in. I understand that that's a valid concern. I've never turned in a blank ballot before. And so I've had some people have said, listen, I want to vote the same person all the way down, not because I necessarily believe that it is somehow strategically effective, but simply because I don't want someone else to fill in an oval. And so if that's your end goal, is I just don't want anyone else to fill in an oval, totally fine. But if your end goal is, well, I think it's because I'm going to give the same vote to the same person multiple times, then in that case, that end goal would not make, strategic sense, so to speak.
So it would be versus not line out, but just leave that whole line where that particular person is listed as first, second, and third, leave it blank then.
So if you leave it blank, if you vote for the first candidate and then you vote for the third, but you leave the second blank, they're going to take your third choice candidate and it's going to bump up to the second round. So think about it this way. If you leave this third spot blank, right? And they go to count up your ballot and it's 1, you left the second one blank, and then it's 3. If they have to pull your first one away and there is no second one, they're going to go to what your next choice is and it's going to go count in that second round.
Okay.
If it's left blank, right?
That would be better than having somebody try to
Yeah, now
overmark it.
one thing I will point out is that you have an option for a write-in candidate. So what you could do, hypothetically in that situation, is you could write in a candidate, vote them as your number 2 spot, and the odds that write-in candidate got the fewest amount of votes is probably pretty high, right? Let's say you voted for yourself. I don't know, maybe you got lots of friends out there and you don't get eliminated. But if they went to that second choice that was a write-in, and then it would get, right, that one would then get eliminated because it had the least amount of votes. And so you see how that could work. I mean, I've had people say that if they're, want to try to game it one way or the other. I don't know. Stephanie, there's one here in front.
It seems to me this is awfully loaded for the second place candidate. I don't see, in all your little examples, the second place candidate has won.
So that's just the way that I've done it. I mean, I could totally change this. And green, for example, could have gotten less over here. And everybody that voted for pink could have voted for blue as their second choice. I will tell you honestly, it doesn't matter.
You don't think it's loaded?
If I take pink and they voted for blue here, and then I took pink and they voted for blue here, that just had to do with who I made my second or third choice, right? But I could get rid of pink and I could put blue up this way, and I could put blue up that way, right? And then blue wins. The only reason that I set this so that green would win is so that you could understand that blue had the most votes in the first round of counting, but who has the most votes in the first round of counting is not necessarily who will win. Because your second round of counting could decide. But if in your second round of counting, you know, every pink voter said, hey, I want blue, then blue would just get that much more stacked. So it doesn't quite work that way. Like I said, I gave that example so that you could see that even someone with the most votes can still lose. But someone with the most votes, if they're still the second choice, right? If blue is like the most popular candidate, they don't have 50% plus one. But that is, you know, your leading blue candidate, and then everyone that votes for pink also agrees that blue is their leading candidate, then in that case blue wins, even though they led with votes, and they could continue to lead with votes through each round of counting. It's entirely possible. There's one behind you. Stephanie right behind you, I think.
Oh. So if you like blue or green, you know, you wanted the green or the blue guy, you put the green first. What would happen if could you write in 3 other different people?
Your ballot right now has an option. It has one write-in option. Whether or not you like that,
Ink the other people.
you can write in one name or you cannot vote for the other ones. Those are your options there.
This is hopefully a fairly, simple issue, but this is just something that I've been asked about ranked choice voting, and thank you, by the way, for being here and helping us to understand all this crazy. So, do we know where the ballots are processed at? This is a 2-part question, honestly. So, 2 questions. One, do we know where the ballots are processed if they are in Anchorage? The other part of that question would be, do we have poll watchers, observers, or volunteers who are willing to go out there and observe during that time? Because I have observed for assembly things, and I would just like to kind of know if it's processed here. I think that we need to keep kind of a close watch on making sure that our candidates actually have a fair shot.
So that's a voter integrity question. I can't address that up here today. This is strictly ranked choice voting, and how ranked choice voting works. On any integrity issues, you'd have to seek out, you know, whoever the candidate. I mean, some candidates have more poll watchers than others. We don't have anything to do with that.
Is it processed here though in the city or not?
So you've got in Juneau they'll process votes. They will count votes here in Anchorage. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I think because the way this is set up, it's so that they can get 50% plus the 1 vote, all in one shot, instead of having a runoff election. If all 4 voters or all 4 candidates were getting a certain amount of votes and there was nobody that got 50% plus 1, then the 2 highest would have a runoff election so that the 1 can get 50% plus 1. But with this, there is no runoff because they eliminate the other candidates that didn't make it and add it to the others.
Right, and that's why I say someone will get 50% plus 1, right? There have been some people who have said, well, I'm only going to vote for my candidate. I'm not going to contribute I'm not going to let the person that I don't like win. And so I'm not even going to give them a vote because I'm not going to help them get to 50% plus 1. The reality is, whether you give them the vote or it gets eliminated, you know, we've said for years, if you don't vote, it's a vote for the other guy, right? It's the same thing in ranked choice voting. They're going to get to 50% plus 1, whether you give that vote to the candidate or not. Because if you didn't vote, if you didn't have that voice in that specific round, that ballot goes away. And so they've essentially, you know, by process of elimination, they're going to get to 50% plus 1. You're not going to hold any candidate back and say that I'm not going to help you get there, because by the fact that you didn't participate in a particular round of voting, it helps that candidate because you've already reduced the number of votes, the total number of votes that they need anyways, right?
Okay, so what I'm understanding is that the top 2 vote getters, they're not going to reveal their second, third, or fourth choices. Only the people that are eliminated are flipped over to their second or third choice.
That's correct. So if I voted for blue or green, whether I voted for one or whether I voted all the way down the ballot, it's not going to matter. It's a moot point, right? And because no one, if I voted for blue, no one's ever getting to my second choice or my third choice or my fourth choice. So it doesn't really matter. It has no bearing, right? And so for those that say, well, I'm going to vote for this candidate, but I don't want to split the vote. If you are so sure that blue is going to win, then it doesn't hurt you to vote green, pink, yellow, because blue's in the race the whole time anyways, right? We're only going there if your candidate, like I said, is already out. It's as though they never even ran for office to begin with.
You have all the colors of tie-dye. How do you know, how do you get to the four? If all of the candidates are on that ballot and you're ranking them, I mean, how do you get to the four?
How do you get to the four?
Yeah, the original four on the ranking.
So your ballot will start with all four names are going to appear on line one.
But there's more than four colors that are on that ballot.
I think he's saying in the primary with, let's say, 20 candidates, there's going to be the top four getters will be in the general, like in November.
Yeah, so for ranked choice voting, you will have no more than four. So on August 16th, you'll have your regular primary, and you're only going to vote for one. And that ballot will have a crazy list of names for more than one race, right? But you'll only vote for one there. When you have the four, you'll have no more than four in ranked choice voting. You can have up to four. Like I said, some of the legislative races will only have two. As I think most people are aware, we've got some races that will only have three. So it'll depend on what that race is.
Who came up with this idea?
In other words, the primary eliminates
Everybody down to 4 people for the.
Yes, after the primary, the top 4 vote getters will be who moves on to the general election. So ranked choice voting, you will have 4.
In the past, we used to have a pretty good idea of who was going to win. What's the time frame on this?
About 2 weeks. So here's what will happen. On election night, they will release, so this is for the general election portion, okay? We'll get the primary portion out of the way because that's the easy one. So on primary, just like we knew on June 11th, you'll have a pretty solid idea as to who your top 4 are going to be, right? At least your top 2. Maybe 3 and 4 apart from each other by perhaps a point or 2. For the ranked choice voting portion, it gets very interesting because you have to wait for those overseas ballots to come in. You've got to wait for the mail-in ballots to come in. And you cannot eliminate anyone until every last vote is in. So, in a regular election, we could look at it and say, well, this candidate is ahead by whatever, 10,000 votes. Even out of all the ballots that come in, this candidate's still going to win. The ballots that are coming in don't really matter, right? In fact, Alaska feels that way a lot of times on the national scene, right? It's like we look at what happened in Washington, D.C., it's like, oh, my vote for president doesn't matter. It's already been determined. And so, in this case, you can't even start, like it is on election night, whoever leads, for better or for worse, whether it's your favorite candidate or your least favorite candidate or color, that could completely go topsy-turvy one way or the other, because you have to wait for every ballot to come in so that we can make sure that we know who has the least amount of votes before we start going to the second choice, potentially the third choice, and so on and so forth. And Stephanie, I don't know if we have any questions from Fairbanks.
Okay, I'll check the phone just a moment.
Yeah, now, my understanding is we have 3 write-in candidates, and there's a 0.5% rule. The 0.5% rule says you have an aggregate of all the candidates, then they go to the next step. My last portion of my question is, if they're not going to count the write-in candidates, then why is that not in violation of Amendment 14, Section 2 of the US Constitution? since that's a requirement all ballots have to be counted.
So you'll have an option for one write-in candidate. So one write-in candidate, you can fill in that spot. But then again, whoever gets, those votes get counted. But if you have that write-in candidate, that vote gets counted. But if they have the least amount of votes, then they're getting eliminated.
Well, I'm talking about the three. I'm talking about the three write-in candidates. And they take my understanding is they take the total of the write-in candidates, see if they're within 0.5% on the first choice. Then if they don't, they're not counting them, and that goes to the question of why it's not in violation of the 14th Amendment, Section 2 of the US Constitution.
So the regular candidate's not the write-in, right?
How about the write-in candidates?
There's 3 registered write-in candidates
Correct.
only. Everybody else, like Stubbs the Cat or Bows the Cat, is a random write-in, but there's only 3 that are registered with Division of Elections.
I see what I was thinking you were confusing write-in candidates with these candidates. So again, under ranked choice voting, whether they're a declared write-in candidate, whether it's a candidate that you write in on your own or whatever it is, they're going to count them.
No, they're not. I was told by the election division they weren't going to count them unless they had first a total number of the write-ins. They told me that. Mr. Jackson told me that.
Right, because you're going to take whoever has the least amount and go, right? I mean, it's Alaska, weird things happen. We've had write-in candidates win before. I mean, it could happen. I don't know. I can't explain to you the legality of what they're doing, if it's legal or not, or it should be challenged or not. I can't speak to that. I can speak to the process they have and how they're going to be counting them up. So.
On the right, pardon me, on the write-in candidates, are they going to have only those that are qualified to be write-in, or are they going to be, or is it going to be an open game for anybody that wants to put in something?
You can write any name in that you want, right? You have to be a declared candidate, I believe, to have that count. But you can, you can write in your own name. Like I said, some people are doing that because they don't want to leave a ballot blank on one or the other.
This is going to be counted by computer? And what happens if everything goes belly up?
Well, that would be a question for Division of Elections. Like I said, I can speak to how ranked choice voting works. Cannot speak to if you want to question if they're doing it legally or what do they do if all the computers crash or the power goes out or whatever it is. Find your lieutenant governor, I suppose.
I have a clarifying request. So there is a special election for the vacancy of the late Don Young. That's going to be on this August 16th as a general special. That's correct.
Right.
And then there's going to be a primary where we're going to have a whole bunch of names. So these 3 that are in the ranked choice, they're going to also show up again in the primary with all those other names.
Correct.
All right,
yep.
Thank you.
So you'll have the regular primary.
And you vote for one of those.
Vote for one in the regular primary. And on your regular primary ballot, you will have governor, Senate, Congress, and then your legislative races, right? State House and State Senate. So you'll have those races up. And then on the general side, the special general, you're going to flip that ballot over and it's going to rank it. And if you pay close attention to the ballot, it says vote for one in this primary, and then you flip it over and it'll say, you can vote for as few or as many as you like, I think is the exact language. I don't have that in front of me, but it does say for as few or as many, I believe is the language.
So this ranked choice voting is only going to be used for general elections in the future and not primaries, is that correct?
So yes and no. As far as ranking 4 candidates goes, right, the ranking process of this, where you take 4 of them, that pertains to the general. The part of ranked choice voting that pertains to the primary is that we no longer have closed primaries. And so you have what some call an open primary, some will call it a jungle primary. You will hear it referred to with one of those 2 terms, and that's what they're referring to, right? Is there is no longer a closed primary. So ranked choice voting affects the primary in that sense, but it doesn't affect the primary in the sense that you're voting for more than one. Does that make sense? Okay. Awesome. I think a couple right here. Stephanie's getting her steps in.
That's right. Should have exercise.
Bernadette, I was thinking about his question about the write-ins. Perhaps they're going to treat it like a wild card, like you've got the 4 regulars, and then if you had another purple with a W on it, like a wild card, and they tally those write-ins. If they have, let's say, 25 in the write-ins and number 4 only has 15, that it would progress in the same way, basically.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I'll be honest with you guys,
they would anticipate that many.
Yeah, I mean, the writing component of this, I'll just be completely blunt with you. I haven't looked at too much because it is so, I mean, you look at writing candidates, right, and it's like 10, 5. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people in Alaska that will be voting in this election where it becomes such a moot point, right? When you start getting into the constitutionality of it, that sort of thing, like I say, that's a question for, Division of Elections, Lieutenant Governor, and the courts, quite frankly.
My question was about the write-ins also. So if you had 20 write-ins, well, it could be hundreds, like you said.
Right.
So does each write-in count as a round, or does are they all eliminated in one round if they only had like 2 or 3 votes each?
Well, then they would get eliminated all in one, right? Am I right on that, Suzanne? Do you know the answer to that? That's my understanding.
That's not gonna count. It's your 4th choice. It's not gonna count at all.
Right. Well, because you'd have to get down to that 4th choice on your ballot anyways. And so it goes back to your 4th choice not counting at all, right? Or, for example, if you only have 3 in the race, then your 3rd choice doesn't count anyway. Like, you don't even get there, is the point on that one.
Here's how it could count. I'll just make a little correction on what I said. In many races in Alaska, there are only 2 people on the ballot.
Right.
If you had a small community like Cordova, they all of a sudden said, we really want to, everybody write in this one name. And in Juneau recently, a write-in candidate won for school board. You could actually affect change in a small, if they only had like 2 people on the ballot.
And if they are a declared.
And if they're declared.
You have to be a declared write-in candidate, right? So there's a difference between being a declared write-in candidate and then just, me writing my name in. And so that's what that difference is, right? We saw that in a Senate race here not too far back with actually a declared write-in candidate. Do you have any other questions? Are we about good?
We're going to go ahead and end it for tonight, and we just wanted to thank everybody for coming. We have water outside, and we have some really, really great cookies from a gal. She's right over there in Muldoon, and she homemade these cookies. They say Americans for Prosperity Foundation on it. It has like a little paper lining on top, which is edible, and so we always find it really important to support local, so make sure you grab a cookie. And once again, we'd just like to thank you all for coming. Make sure you kind of think about 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, and you kind of tell your neighbor to vote, and let it spread out like that. It's truly a grassroots effort to make sure that everybody in your community is getting out to vote and being a part of the great democracy of our country. So thanks so much.
And I'm gonna leave you guys with one closing point, something that I really urge you all to consider. In final thoughts as we wrap this up, the biggest thing about ranked choice voting is that after a primary, you would typically see in a primary, everybody kind of duke it out, right? We'd all have our debates. It was policy, sometimes it would get personal, whatever it was, we would duke it out. And by the time that primary came in August, for the most part, we were on one team or the other. But even having 2 teams, we were still pretty much unified, right? There was some unity. Whether you were on, the defensive team or the offensive team, there was some sense of unity. The greatest thing about this country is our democracy. That is at the heartbeat of what makes America such a great country. The fact that now you have people that are so divided because you don't have that unifying effort that you would have after a traditional primary, you cannot allow democracy to divide. Usually we would kind of hold out until August, right? And then after August, regardless of what your party affiliation was, right? That camp would kind of get together and this camp would get together and there was somewhat of a unity. And what I have seen now is a division that is going for a longer amount of time that for any community is just not sustainable. And so it's really important that we stop and we think about the greatest aspect of this country is democracy. Do not allow the fact that democracy, the way that we've changed it, it can't divide us. We've got to be very, very careful on that. And so I would urge everyone to think about that, right? Because we don't have the opportunity to kind of come together and hold hands and rally either behind one candidate or the other. And like I said, there was always that division, right? Because you always still had two. But now you're seeing that division magnified and kind of put on steroids because you have so many of them. And so it's something to think about and be aware of. There are, I know a lot of you in this room that have stood right by me, shoulder to shoulder, and we have advocated for, hey, yeah, we got a difference of opinion, but we have every right to have our voice heard, right? We don't want to be canceled simply because we don't agree with you. And it's important that as we have this conversation and we look at not allowing democracy to be the very thing that divides us, that we don't go canceling out each other because we disagree on a race, right? I've seen this race get pretty nasty and personal. I've seen some nasty attacks be made over what typically at this point, having gone through a primary in June, we would have been unified. And so it's something to think about. It's a side effect of ranked choice voting. It's a nasty side effect, but I'll leave you with that closing thought. So I appreciate all of you coming out. We've got a few videos up on our Facebook page. If you get home tonight and you realize, oh my gosh, I have a question, it didn't get answered, we will get you a question on the tie issue of the coin drop thing. Like I said, I'm going to be honest with you guys, I don't know the answer to that. I am not going to stand up here and try to be an encyclopedia on every single part of this, but we will get an answer. We'll make sure that we get that answer out. And so, like I say, if you get home and you realize, or maybe you're talking to a friend and you can't really entirely recount, gosh, what did Bernadette say about that? You can find us on social media. Find Stephanie, find Sarah, John. We've got a whole crew here, and big thanks to our volunteers, and thanks to you guys for coming out. I know it is not easy. I get it 100%. So thanks, guys. Have a great night.
Thanks again, my fellow Alaskans, for being here with us all tonight. We got to listen to how ranked choice voting works. Hopefully your question that you may have had burning in your mind about this election and how to rank people was answered tonight. If not, do reach out to Prosperity America and get a hold of them, and they are more than happy to answer their questions. I, too, now have a better understanding of it. The one and only question I wasn't sure about was answered tonight. Other than that, I have nailed the election process for ranked choice voting 100% down the line since the first day they announced that it was going to be a possibility and it might pass. Take a second right now, like and share this video, and as soon as you get done doing that, click that link to go to Politadick.com. Your support made it possible for me to be here today. It covered the gas costs to drive from Big Lake all the way into Anchorage to be a part of this event. Thank you all for being here once again, and you guys have yourself a great evening.